Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another episode of the Amelie Moran podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about San Cristobal de las Casas, which is still in Mexico. We are still in Mexico. It feels like we've been in Mexico for so long, but we did spend quite a lot of time there. But this will be the last place in Mexico that I'm telling you all about and all the things there are to do there and also my experience. I feel like to start this episode, we need to go to the end of my last Mexico episode, which is Puerto Escondido, and talking about how that trip kind of ended, because that really sort of set the tone for how this place was going to be. We'd spent a really good amount of time in Puerto, I think. We had spent probably about a week, maybe just over a week. We were feeling so relaxed, so good, and I think it just really helped us feel a lot more chilled about the next few days. But I would say we were quite sad to leave Puerto. It was a really nice time for us, and it was a really, like I've said, relaxing place. And obviously, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can go and watch that episode another time. But we got to the bus station and we did the 13-hour journey on a bus to the other side of Mexico, essentially, or if not, that's what it felt like. We arrived at about 9 a.m. in San Cristobal, so it was, I feel like the mentality is kind of similar to when you are that person that books an early morning flight and you feel like, okay, let's get the flight at 6 a.m. because then we'll have the rest of the day to explore, blah, blah, blah. But like, you never take into account the fact that you are going to be exhausted because you have gotten up so early for this flight. I feel like that was the kind of energy that we had. We thought it'd be really ideal to get the night bus because you don't want to waste a day traveling on a bus. It's also hot, so it just would be really uncomfortable. But what you're not thinking about is the fact that you've been on a bus for 13 hours and arriving at 9 a.m. sounded like a good idea, but inevitably we were just exhausted and didn't really want to do much, to be honest. We weren't really sure what there was to do in San Cristobal, if I'm honest. It was sort of a place that we chose to go simply because we'd heard good things about it, didn't actually know what those things were. Maybe apart from the kind of famous canyon that's there, but we really didn't know anything about it. So we sort of turned up at 9 a.m. and thought, what the hell is there to do here? Like, what have we got ourselves into? And we had originally planned to go from Wednesday to Saturday, arrive on the Wednesday and then leave on the Saturday. But plans changed because buses to Guatemala, which was the next destination we were going to, only went on weekdays. And so that kind of messed up our trip because it meant that instead of having 2 full days to do things, go on tours or go and explore the town, was cut short to 1 day. And sounds a bit dramatic, but that was really annoying for us and wasn't ideal because obviously we'd just arrived, wanted to sort of absorb the place, but we didn't have a lot of time to do that. So this episode is going to be me telling you what there is to do in San Cristobal, and also, if you don't have a lot of time, the absolute musts that I really, really recommend. So let's get into it. I always start these episodes off talking about the history and culture of a place because I feel like that really sets the tone for it, and I think it gives you an idea, especially if you're somebody who's going to these places for historical reasons or you want to learn more about the culture. I feel like that's the most foundational thing that you're probably going to take in at first. So, for example, in San Cristobal, there was so much Spanish Baroque architecture everywhere. You can really see the influences in the architecture in San Cristobal, as well as lots of indigenous influence with like the local markets and things, and that is definitely the first thing that hits you. We weren't able to go to this, but there is a Fiesta de San Cristobal. Apparently it's all about honouring the city's patron with saint music, dances and colourful parades. That really doesn't surprise me because the town of San Cristobal is extremely colourful. I'm going to put a photo up either side of me to show you how much stuff there is to do here. This photo is from when we arrived at our hostel, and there was sort of just this schedule of things that you could do and get shuttles to and tours and get transport to. So you can have a look to sort of, I'm not going to go through and explain every single one. We obviously didn't do every single one. We did the Sumidero Canyon with viewpoints, and then you go and get to see this small town called Chiapa de Corzo. And like I said, we were only in San Cristobal for one day, so we wanted to pick the kind of most recommended, what can we not leave here without doing excursion. And everybody kept saying to us the canyon, because I think that's just what San Cristobal is most famous for. So I'm going to take you through going to the canyon, because I think it was an experience that we definitely weren't expecting. We'd also come from a very beachy, surfers paradise kind of place. This was much more revolving around nature and landscapes. It was a complete contrast, and I think we just didn't know what to expect. But I will definitely say that the Sumidero Canyon tour was really, really amazing, and it was so, so beautiful. So on the day of the tour, our day started quite early. We had to meet in the reception of our hostel to be picked up by this van, and then we were going to go and do this tour. Just like in Puerto, there were obviously road closures, which meant that we ended up going on this dirt road, and it was the bumpiest ride we've ever experienced. And I'll put videos up to show what it was like, but obviously Sam and I decided to sit at the back, and that was obviously where all of the bumps were, and I feel like we just got the full force of it by sitting at the back. I don't know, but it was a 2-hour drive to where this tour starts, and it was genuinely the most uncomfortable thing ever. So I think we were just unlucky. I don't think it's normal to take that road, but we were getting basically shaken for 2 hours there and back, and to be honest, by the end I just felt quite sick. So yeah, not the best way to start the day. But we do arrive, and it is sunny, which is nice. I'm in t-shirt and biker shorts, and obviously I'm not wearing any sun cream. I burn quite easily. I think you can probably tell just from looking at my skin. And so yeah, I did end up getting quite burnt on this tour. But anyway, this is a boat tour. So you sort of go through the canyons on this river, and that was not what we were expecting. I don't remember knowing it was going to be a boat tour. So I was a bit anxious about it, because I already felt quite sick from the car ride, and then I also sometimes get a bit ill on boats. So I'm thinking, okay, this is not going to be great for me. But anyway, we get our life jackets, and actually just before I even get into it, we were meant to go and see the viewpoints, but because of those road closures that I mentioned before, the road was closed to go and see the viewpoints. I mean, wasn't ideal, but yeah, so I'm not going to be talking about what the viewpoints were like, or I'm not going to be able to show any photos, but it was essentially meant to be you seeing the canyons from a top viewpoint. We didn't get to experience that, but you're meant to. So if you're going to go to the Sumidero Canyon, expect to be able to see the viewpoints. We just weren't able to. Sam and I sit near the front of the boat because I feel like that's a pretty good shout. And then suddenly the boat starts. And when I say it starts, it jets off. It was so quick. I feel like I got whiplash. It is going so quickly down this river. And being at the front, it almost felt like we were sitting vertically up. It was absolutely terrifying. I mean, you get used to it, but it was absolutely terrifying. Especially because as we're going down the river, we're being shown the sides of the canyon, and it's really beautiful. And then crocodiles start turning up, and you've got all these spider monkeys and all these big birds. And I'm like, okay, I really don't want to capsize. I really don't want to fall out the boat. So whilst that was all beautiful, I was quite anxious about the boat, because it just sort of, every time we stopped and started, it really felt like we were going to fall off. It was really cool to see the crocodiles and all of the wildlife there. I think I definitely wasn't expecting it either, so that was a really nice touch. It also kind of, I guess, gave it a bit more of an adrenaline rush, quite fun, because they are swimming basically next to you and they are just there, you can see them. So yeah, I quite liked that aspect of it. And there was actually one point where we pulled up almost on the riverbank, and there was this monkey in a tree, and we were trying to get it to come down so we could see it a lot more clearly, because the trees were obviously blocking it. And this girl pulls out a banana that she's brought with her and starts throwing it at this monkey. Well, not at the monkey, but like below where the monkey is, to try and get it to come down. And it did come down, and it was really, really sweet. It was so, so cute. And that was quite a nice moment, I think, just like an added touch to the tour. We also played this game where you would sort of shout into the canyon and you could hear your echoes, because it echoed for so long if you shouted it out into the canyons. And it was quite fun just sort of playing games and everyone was screaming, shouting, trying to test it out for themselves. So that was quite fun as well. But anyway, we finished the tour and we drive to this small town called Chiapa de Corzo. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a tiny town, but it has really good food. Obviously, my sweet tooth is trying to find any sweet treat, and we stumble upon a bakery. We found this to be quite common in Central America as well, that bakeries are just like overloaded, like drowning in pastries and bread and loads of baked goods. And I feel like you don't see this in the UK or Australia or anywhere else in the world. And everything is so cheap individually, which obviously was good for us because it meant that we could spend more and try more different pastries. But we just got loads of stuff to bring back with us, especially because we knew we had a 2-hour drive back to our hostel on this bumpy road and wanted something to snack on. But I absolutely loved these bakeries and I've just never seen anything like it. It was so normal. I think that was where everyone gets their bread and all their sweet treats. You had loads of pastries just covered in sugar, covered in cinnamon, all of these different flavors, and I absolutely loved it. We just don't see it anywhere else, I don't think, in the world. If not, I've not seen it anywhere else. It was also nice to be in the bakery because I was extremely burnt at this point, and so I'm just honestly just trying to stay out of the sun. But to close that sort of story, I think if you are there longer, then you could definitely go and do more of the excursions. Some people that we met at our hostel had done quite a few of the excursions, and everything is all about landscape, I would say, in this part of Mexico. And so everything is sort of worth doing, worth trying, or worth paying for, worth traveling to. So I definitely wouldn't have just one day to be here like we did. I would maybe say 4 or 5 days. That will also leave you enough time to try all of the food in this area of Mexico. Their food, again, I've said it in every video about Mexico because I think Mexican cuisine is just one of my favourite. Here we had loads of tamales, we had the mole sauce again, which I've mentioned previously, the chili chocolate spices sauce that you might have with meat. They also, I don't think that we tried this, but apparently they have hot chocolate with spices, I guess sort of playing into the whole mole sauce and making a hot chocolate version, which I think would have been really nice, if anything, because it's a bit colder in San Cristobal. So something like hot chocolate is definitely a must. Now, before recording this episode today, I was just going through everything with Sam, just trying to double check that I hadn't missed anything, any tips, anything we experienced. And I distinctly remember having this purple corn drink. There is a corn drink in San Cristobal, which is a local spirit made from corn. So it's alcoholic, but for some reason, I just remember there being this purple corn drink that we drank. And Sam has no recollection of this, has no idea what I'm talking about. But I swear it happened. But I don't remember it happening here, but I don't know where else we would have had a corn drink. If anything, there is an alcohol that is made out of corn and tastes like corn. I just distinctly remember it being bright purple for whatever reason. I don't know if it was here or if it was later on in our trip, but I cannot get this drink out of my head. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I think that's why I remember it. But Sam just sort of drank it and didn't think much of it. So maybe that's why I remember it more. I don't know. But yeah, you can try the local spirit as well here, which I have a feeling we tried, but we'll never know. Another nice thing is that we actually arrived on Valentine's Day in San Cristobal. So on the evening that we arrived, we went next door to this churro place and got the nicest churros. I honestly think they were on par with Mexico City churros. Like, they were so good. And we just got them, sat in our room, watched a film, and we just had them for dessert. And it was honestly so good. Now, if we look beyond the main square and the markets in San Cristobal, there are quite a few hidden gems, I would say, and I would recommend you go and see or do. I'd seen on TikTok there was this church that everyone kept talking about in San Cristobal, and it's got a gorgeous view of the city, and also it's just a really nice hike to do. So when we got back from our Sumidero Canyon tour, we went and hiked up to this church. It is a steep walk, I won't lie. It was quite a lot. I think it's called La Iglesia de San Cristobal. the church of San Cristobal, I guess. It was a really nice spot to just absorb the city and all of the landscapes. Like I've said, I feel like San Cristobal is all about landscapes and nature, and it was so, so beautiful. We couldn't go in the church necessarily, but just walking around the top of the mountain was so nice, especially, I would say, evening time when it's still hot, but it's not too hot and it's starting to cool down a bit. Another place that I saw when I was doing some research, we actually didn't go here, but it's called Grutas de Rancho Nuevo. It's a few kilometers outside of San Cristobal, and it's got natural caves, and you can also do some zip lining, so it sounds pretty fun. I have to say our hostel, Puerta Vieja, was a complete hidden gem. I really do have to give it credit. It was probably the best or one of the best hostels we stayed in on our entire trip. It was absolutely massive. There was so many rooms. We fortunately got a private room here. It didn't actually lock, which was a bit embarrassing. After Sam and I got back and were eating our churros in bed, just chilling, watching a film, this whole group of friends like opened our door and just sort of stood there in the doorway because they must have been quite drunk and thought it was their room, and they just stood there in the doorway and we were like, hi, and they were like, hi. It was really awkward. The room was fine apart from that. But this hostel, I would say the atmosphere was so comfortable and there was so much to do. There was a bar. It was a really good place to socialize and meet other backpackers, other people, and hearing about their journeys, what they're up to. Some people are doing similar journeys, going through Central America afterwards. Some people are doing completely different journeys, and I absolutely love speaking to people and hearing all about it. We also got breakfast and dinner every day included in the price of our room, which is so ideal. I feel like when you're backpacking, sometimes the only option feels like going out for breakfast or going out for dinner because you don't have access to certain things. But I would recommend trying to book hostels that will give you food. We didn't know that they were going to give us food, to be honest. It didn't say it anywhere, but it was such a blessing in disguise because also I think in the town there weren't loads and loads of restaurants per se. There were obviously some, but it wasn't a massive choice. So it was really nice to be able to just have a home-cooked meal from the hostel. You know, we had like lasagna one night, we had tacos the next night, and it was nice because everybody's lining up, everybody's going to get their food together, you're sitting on tables with other people, you're just able to socialise a lot better than if we were going out for dinner at random places. I would say it felt more like a small community living together. I feel like that's the best way to describe it. It was very, very friendly, and I will say really welcoming to solo travellers as well. Pretty much everyone we met there was a solo traveller, and they said that they felt really comfortable in this place. A pro tip I will give any solo travellers, any travellers in general, but solo travellers, is bring a deck of cards with you or bring something like Monopoly Deal. I brought Monopoly Deal and a pack of cards. Bring one because I feel like they're the best icebreakers. Going up to people after dinner and just being like, do you guys want to play? Maybe other people don't have cards and they want to play cards, and you can sort of be like, oh, I've got some. And I think they're just the best way to meet people and just start a conversation. I brought Monopoly Deal and we ended up playing this massive game of Monopoly Deal with people at the hostel. There was like, I think we tried to play it with about 6 people because everybody wants to get involved. You can then start chatting to other people, and because you're all focused on the game, it's not awkward, basically. I feel like that's something that a lot of people are worried about, is that awkwardness of trying to make friends. But I honestly think if you have something that's an icebreaker, then you're set and you'll be fine. And also our hostel had the best rooftop view of the city. I don't know why no one went up there. Like when we went up there, there was no one there. No one was hanging out there, but we would take snacks up and a speaker and just admire the view. It was honestly beautiful. Now everybody's favourite part, talking about safety. This place is generally a safe space. There are just the obvious, don't flash expensive things, don't carry around lots of money. I don't know, just be aware of your surroundings, be aware, but just like you are in everyday life. A practical tip I guess I would give is we were really lucky to not get ill here, because apparently San Cristobal is famous or notorious for people getting ill because of their water quality. Lots of people were really ill from ingesting the water either accidentally or drinking it from the tap. Do not drink the tap water in San Cristobal. I mean, don't in Mexico generally, I guess, but especially in San Cristobal because There was one guy who was staying in the hostel that we were, and he had been there for a few weeks trying to get over this stomach bug that he'd had. Even some girls were saying that their hair had been ruined because of the water, or their skin was coming up in a bit of a rash. I think also some people's downstairs areas were getting all messed up, pH levels and things, I don't know. But the water is really, really, I guess, powerful in San Cristobal, and everybody was quite surprised we'd not gotten ill from it. I think just take precaution, like when you're showering, try not get your face under the water, or don't brush your teeth with the tap water. Bottled water is pretty cheap, and also most hostels will give you a bottle of water complimentary. So just sort of taking simple measures. I can't say that the water ruined my hair or skin, but there were just some girls that told me to be careful. I think if you're spending a long time there, obviously we weren't. So yeah, just something to think about, because as we all know, I've done an episode on it, it's really annoying when your hair gets ruined by the water, especially when we were so close to the beginning of our travels. Another practical tip is that it gets cold in San Cristobal. It's at a higher altitude than a lot of places in Mexico. So bring your layers, bring maybe leggings. I wouldn't say it's a whole tracksuit situation where you need to be like thermals and jacket. I was just in a fleece and thin trousers, but my legs were quite cold. Just something to keep you warm. The actual rooms itself and like your accommodation, I don't think will be cold. It's just outside, can get quite cold in the evening. And lastly, there are loads of ATMs in San Cristobal. There are also quite a few banks. But if the ATMs don't work, the bank queues are so long. Like, I can't tell you, they go round multiple blocks, the queues for these banks. I noticed it became quite a common theme in Central America as well, that all of the queues for banks are so long. And I never figured out why. Honestly, no idea why the lines are so long, but it is so frustrating. If the ATM doesn't work and you have to go to the bank to get money out, it's like a whole day trip. It's a whole thing. It's not a quick pop in, pop out. So I would say taking out some cash, because some things you might need to pay for cash, like tours in our hostel, we had to pay in cash. Or just make sure you've loaded up your card and you're only going to pay for things with card. Just come prepared, I think, is the main bit of advice, because it is so frustrating when you have to go to the bank and wait for hours. And I genuinely mean hours just to get some money out. Okay, now we're going to do Amelie's ranking system. So, food and drink, I've said 8 out of 10. Absolutely loved all the food. Churros, amazing. Nightlife, 8 out of 10. I said that in relation to our hostel, I feel, more than the towns or cities nightlife, because we had a bar, the drinks were quite cheap. We had really, really good socializing, lots of people to meet. So I would say 8 out of 10 for the kind of hostel night out. History and culture, 8 out of 10. Accessibility and English level, I said 7 out of 10, just because a lot of things are outside of San Cristobal that you might want to go and do. You can get cheap taxis, but they're not going to be that cheap if you're going further and further away. So the best option turns out to be booking a tour and booking a sort of shuttle, which isn't always the cheapest. And in terms of English level, everybody spoke English at our hostel, for example. All the tour guides spoke English. It was, I would say, in terms of language, really, really accessible. Safety, 9 out of 10. Expenses, I've said 7 out of 10, because it was very similar to previous places in Mexico, very similar prices. Our hostel was a similar price to what we paid in other places, but then also the food itself was pretty cheap, so I felt like it balances it out. Overall, I'm giving San Cristobal de las Casas 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Amelie Moran podcast. I'm really excited because next time we're actually going to be going to Guatemala, and I can't wait to start talking about Guatemala. It was one of my favourite places that we went to. Make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast. Also like this episode, and I will see you next time. Bye!